Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and this woke guest won't shut up and tries to shut down Paris Denard on CNN. And what happens next is absolutely legendary.
If you're okay with him screwing porn stars, just say the words, I'm okay with Donald Trump screwing porn stars. Can you say that for me, Paris? Because
you know what I will say is that you have no respect for Mrs. Trump, you have no respect for his children, you have no respect for his family.
I'm sorry.
Because this has nothing to do with him as a candidate, and it has nothing to do with him as the sitting president of the United States. You can dig up dirty laundry, and I pray to God nobody goes back in your past and picks up something that has nothing to do with your present time as sitting here on this commentator. But it's rude and it's offensive. It has nothing to do with him as a president. Criticize the president for his policy, criticize the president for his tactics, but don't go back and criticize him for something that has nothing to do with the presidency.
For folks across this country because of his behavior towards people. Don't you dare talk about respect when he insulted the family of Humayun Khan. Don't you dare talk about respect when Donald Trump insulted John McCain's war service. That is a man who has no respect for anyone on this earth. And the fact that you're defending him on that speaks much more about your character and
Rick, I don't know you. Rick, I don't know you, but I would advise you to not question my character because you don't know me. But if you like to talk to me about my character and what I believe, I can have that conversation separately. But what I will say is if you're going to impugn the integrity of the president, do so on things that are relevant to him as a candidate and as the president, not things that have nothing to do with his presidency. That's all I'm saying. Continue to rabble.
You can just say it.
Guys, no personal insults. No personal insults, please. And let me jump in because Paris, here's a question for you. Is we are talking about the payment coming out just days before the presidential election. Let me flip it around. If this was Hillary Clinton, what would happen if Hillary Clinton's lawyer paid off an accuser days before the election? How do you think Trump would react? Fair question.
I think on the issue of a payment by the lawyer, I think he would have a reaction. Absolutely.
And what kind of reaction do you think that would be?
It would be negative. I'm certain it would be negative. But I'm also saying that that is a separate issue from if she did something while she was a candidate or if she did something while she was the sitting Secretary of State. That is what all I'm saying is let's separate apples from oranges. If we're going to talk about the payment and the timing of that, that's fair. But to bring up the allegation that happened long before he was a candidate or president, I think is irrelevant. And I think that's why he's not commenting on it.
Because this happened. It happened years and years ago. And I think you're absolutely right in pointing out he was private citizen Donald Trump at the time. But it is entirely germane because we're talking about the payment and the this hush money days before everyone went to the polls to elect him as president of the United States. That is, you are allowed to connect the two there.
You're allowed to raise the question as to why Michael Cohen did that in his personal capacity as his lawyer. But at the end of the day, there's attorney-client privilege, and that's not going to come out. And I think all of this extra comment about what Stormy has to say or what she doesn't have to say is just to embarrass the First Lady.
Y'all, there's a lot to unpack in this. And first off, Paris Denard, God bless him, he goes into enemy territory constantly, has to hold his own against a media that only exists there to smear conservatives as best as they possibly can. And I'm going to be honest, the anchor actually does a good job moderating here, because on one hand, the guest, I don't even know his name, is just going off on this weird unhinged rant. You can't even understand the words that are coming out of his mouth. And the moderator does have to reel him back in and does ask an honest question. But I've got another question for this moderator. I've got another question for the mainstream media. And it's actually the first reason I voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Hey y'all, as we know, you don't put all your eggs into one basket, right? So that's why I'm partnering over with my friends at Colonial Metals Group who will help diversify your portfolio. And what they'll do is they'll set up for you a self-directed IRA account. You'll have direct access to your assets, you'll be able to see what all's going on, and it doesn't matter what the stock market does or what often happens, what the government does, your assets will be protected. So let the team of experts over at Colonial Metals Group help secure your account and your family's future today. There's a link in the description below. Oh, and by the way, if you don't like that, there's a 1-800 number you can call, and most importantly though, is the kicker. They'll throw in a safe and possibly up to $10,000 in US silver to help you get things started. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. I was initially going to the polls and I was going to leave President blank in 2016 because I didn't want Trump at the time. Then the allegations came out. And you know what? I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The question that I need to ask the media and that you need to ask the mainstream media is this. Why did you sit on a story for so long and waited until October to spring the news? That is exactly what happened with the Hollywood Access tapes. Remember that? Where Trump said something that was vile and disgusting, vulgar and uncouth. I'm not above criticizing Donald Trump. No one should be above that. So, why did they sit on this story? This story was out there for 13 years, and they sprung it in late October before an election. This is a story that could have sunk him in the primaries, before the evangelical voters realized that Donald Trump was the only man with the rhetoric and the fire-breathing ability to burn down the ridiculous straw houses that these pigs in the mainstream media have made for themselves. That's when I realized that the media was out to destroy anyone in their way. They were out there to destroy and ruin the lives of anyone who dares cross their lines. That's why I voted for Trump in 2016, because at the time I was an arch conservative thinking Donald Trump doesn't really support my conservative positions. If you know any Ron DeSantis simps in your life, that's what I used to sound like. Now I've come to the terrible conclusion that Donald Trump is the only one who is actually fighting on any front. Ted Cruz couldn't get it done. John Kasich couldn't get it done. Mitt Romney certainly couldn't. John McCain couldn't. George Bush barely tried. We need people who actually push the envelope and push the narrative. It's why the establishment part of the Republican Party, I call them chamberists, by the way. I've got a whole political theory. I won't bore you with it now. But these people don't understand what conservatives have been wanting for so long. They've been wanting a fighter who actually espouses the rhetoric that they understand fundamentally. And the mainstream media hates it. They've always hated this. And they will make fun of it wherever they can. Why? Well, on one hand, they are part of the dominant class, and the mainstream media is ingrained with the ruling class. What does the ruling class want to do? Feed into the dominant class. Keep them docile. Give them that nice little hit of dopamine that keeps you happy. We're doing this to our kids, by the way. It's why we're considering banning TikTok, which, because of its Chinese roots and what they want to do to the West, I fully support. But this attempt to drag Trump through the mud over and over and over backfired clearly in 2016, but it worked in 2020. And it's continuing to work, unfortunately, because these people have their just claws deeply entrenched into the mainstream media. And they will do everything to keep their position. And unfortunately, it has come at the cost of the truth. And the truth is, Joe Biden is ruining this country. And even worse, he thinks he's the old 90s Democrats. And if we're being honest here, I would have been a 90s Democrat. All right, they had a lot of legitimate gripes with what Reagan had built. Reagan, to be honest, saved this country. Donald Trump kept those Reagan-esque policies going along, and they kept the economy alive. And by the way, you need to shout out Paul Ryan for passing that bill. Don't hate on Paul Ryan for getting good policy right, okay? But the mainstream media, on the other hand, will not report this. They refuse to report the successes and only wish to report the failures. Because if they reported the successes, people would go, maybe these conservatives are on to something. Maybe Reagan was right about this. Maybe these Republicans aren't actually this democracy-hating, evil, hard right-leaning party that the media has made them out to be the villain. The ironic thing is that the villain in this case is right. And if the conservatives are considered villains, then I really, really don't want to see who the mainstream media considers as heroes. It's just something I really don't want to think about. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed the segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And hey, let me know who are your heroes down in the comments below, because I'd really like to see what leaders we need to espouse in order to get future victories. I'd really like to know. Thanks, y'all. Until next time, y'all have a good one.